I'd say like Penrith kind of suffer from success. You know, it's very expensive being a great team. You know, you're always having to pay for finals tickets, pay for grand final tickets.
I just think Penrith, it's a small club, like great for what they've achieved for the size of them, but they're pretty much like, you know, a country town football club.
Ooh.
Every year Parra say this is our year, and it's not. It's like, this is our year, next year's our year, next year's our year. Been saying it since 86. Gonna be saying it for another 30 years. Like, when is it gonna be your year?
Can I ask you a question? If you win the comp this year, right, where are you going to celebrate? Like, you're going to come back to Parramatta and celebrate? Are you going to go to that dirt pile at Penrith?
We might have to move you guys out to the new stadium, and we might just have to take over Parramatta.
You just won't be able to fill it. We know that.
All right, so we've got a bet here. If Penrith win the comp, what are you going to do?
I'll shave my head and let it go.
Parramatta make the 8. What are you going to do?
Not beat the allegations. I'll go to Vegas, and I'll be wearing the Parramatta jersey and get a membership.
Hi there, I'm Roasty and welcome to Change My Mind, brought to you by the Isuzu MU-X. This is a show where we bring diehard rugby league fans face to face, debating the claims they'll stand by and the ones they refuse to back down from. Welcome on the show is Adam from the Talking Parra podcast and Flaxxy from the Mind Games podcast. Penrith fan versus Parramatta fan. Boys, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you hate each other's club?
Not too much, but there's a bit of hate there.
I don't know how we can hate a club we always grew up supporting, but look, for me, it's probably about a 7. I've got other teams I hate a bit more. So
yeah, right. Not too much hatred in the room yet, but we're only just getting started. So, Adam, you've got the first claim. Let's go.
All right, my first claim. Most of Panthers' fan base are bandwagoners who used to follow the Eels. This is perfect for you.
This is perfect for you, Flaxxy. Mate, you've been throwing claims around that you're a bandwagoner, but tell us, are the fans of Penrith now ones that have jumped on the bandwagon, or are they old fans just jumping back on?
I gotta disagree, man. Like, I feel like that question is more directed at me. Obviously, some people, I'm still a Parra fan, So, but Penrith just has such a good culture, and like the local community. I've seen it all the time. You go to Bathurst, you have the community there. I was there last week, and like just to say they're bandwagons of Parra fans. Who would want to be a Parra fan anyway, if I got to be honest? So, I got to disagree with that. Just Penrith, they have a local community that is so ingrained, ever since we were, came into the comp, Penrith have just had that Western Sydney sort of heart to it. And, I just got to disagree with that. I think that's more directed towards me than the fan base.
Yeah, look, I can see what you're saying about lately. Penrith have certainly picked up their culture lately, but before that, just being from, going out to Western Sydney area and stuff, mate, there's so many Parramatta fans in Penrith still. Obviously, Parramatta come around 20 years earlier. A lot of people already followed Parramatta, and they stuck with Parramatta through the success of the 80s. Penrith, when did they start achieving stuff? The 90s for a little bit, and then obviously, the 2020s now. I can see what you're trying to say about their culture and stuff, but I guess the little brother's culture doesn't exist without the big brother.
Ooh. Well, look, I got to say, though, you win one comp, that doesn't make you a bandwagon fan. Look at the Tigers. They won in 2005. They have a great fan base of themselves. They aren't from Parramatta. I wouldn't say they're from Parramatta. Penrith won in 91. They won in 03. Made the grand final in 90 and lost. I don't think that's enough to make a team a bandwagon. And if you're going to go recent history, Parramatta... 09 was the last time they made a grand final before 2022. So I don't think people would have gone to Parramatta. I think they would have grown up being Penrith fans or Tigers fans or Parra fans. And I think that's more going off the back of, their success in the 80s was great, but I don't think that defined people moving clubs just because Panthers won one comp.
Has Parramatta's lack of success since the 80s, caused people to jump on the Penrith bandwagon? Could your club be a little bit more proactive in trying to retain these fans? Yeah,
good shout. I don't think so, though, because as Parramatta fans, we get that glimmer of hope every now and then, and the glimmer of hope is what keeps us going.
Yep.
So, like Flaxxy said, we haven't made a lot of grand finals, but 01, 09, 22, obviously made some prelim finals in that time as well. Look, the toughest period was definitely from 2010 through to probably 2017 as a Parramatta fan, but the fans stayed loyal and the club's kept building since, Centre of Excellence, new ground. We've got 35,000 members. So, Parramatta fans are very loyal and they've stuck with their team for sure.
Yeah. Calling them loyal, they wouldn't be Panthers fans if they were loyal. So just saying that.
This did stem from a bit of history about you being a bandwagoner.
Yes.
Why are you called a bandwagoner?
Well, I did go for Parra. Like, let's just go. As a kid, when I was 7 years old, 2009, when Parramatta made the grand final, I made the switch. Mum's a Panthers fan, sister's a Panthers fan. I was sick of Parra at the time because obviously at the beginning of the year they weren't as successful, and then they had the fairy tale run. Switched and obviously made a bad mistake. Long-term investing, I call it. So, at the end of the day, I won in the end. So
I would say as an adult, you can't change teams. But if you're a kid, maybe there's a bit of leniency. Would you agree there?
Oh, look, my kid gets no leniency, that's for sure. He's 5 years old, knows every player's name, and he supports pretty much two teams, and that's Parramatta and whoever plays the Knights. So, yeah, you could say he jumps on other teams for sure. But, look, in regards to you changing teams, you just pretty much answered my question, didn't you? Penrith fans are bandwagons. You said you jumped off the Parramatta bandwagon because you were frustrated with them. So, there we go. Penrith fans are bandwagoners.
can't argue there.
All right, so you guys are sharing a stadium at the moment at CommBank. Got a game coming up against each other. How do you feel like, you're sharing Parramatta Stadium? How do you feel sharing it with Penrith?
Look, obviously, it's like doing a room share stuff. We're the major tenant. We own the house, and that is, coming in, leasing a room. But it doesn't really affect us, to be honest. So if anything, it's more income for the local Parramatta businesses when their fans bandwagon across. But as it stands, I went there last year when Parramatta played Penrith, the Penrith home game, and there was more blue and gold there than there was Penrith fans. It was really embarrassing for them because they were going a lot better than us, and their members' areas were empty. And this, all around the top and the general admission, the Parramatta away bay was just blue and gold everywhere, and we made all the noise as well.
Any response to your fans not turning up to CommBank?
Look, I would expect that to be happening. We're playing in Parramatta. It's like if CommBank was getting, redone and you guys were playing home out of Penrith. I wouldn't expect all your fans to sort of show up. I would expect more Panthers fans to kind of be there and on a home game if you were there. So, look, even though that is the case, Panthers still won that game. And calling us, the tenant, you look at last year, Tigers had that home ground. We beat them. You guys had that home ground. We beat them. Dogs, they're considered a Western Sydney team to some people. We beat them there. So, to say you're the home tenant, I think we've kind of, taken that away from you. But in terms of fans showing up, it's in Parramatta. I'd be more surprised if there were more Panthers fans there, even being a home game. So,
well, as long as you want to
respond. I'll extend on that because I want to go into this a bit more. I just think Penrith fans don't really travel that well. We've seen the embarrassment over the years when they've had to travel to Allianz and they've had to travel to Accor and stuff like that. They don't travel well at all. And Parramatta fans travel well to Penrith. I said there's a lot of Parramatta fans in Penrith. I remember the 2022 Week 1 final, the Penrith fans, wow, crying, we can't get tickets because all the Parramatta members, they've got more members, they're buying tickets. So I think you'd probably come ahead and say this. Do you think there's more Parramatta fans in Western Sydney than Penrith?
Well, you have a high membership, so I can't disagree with that. You have more, the second highest, I believe, behind Brisbane Broncos. So, yeah, I can't disagree with that, but, yeah.
I'm going to throw it out there that Penrith's far Western Sydney. Is it even a part of Western Sydney?
It's well, basically Blue Mountains at this point. So, but yeah, we're the west of the Western Sydney.
Yeah.
So.
Look, as long as you pay your rent on time at CommBank, I don't think it matters. But Flaxxy, you're up for the next point. What have you got?
I believe that Panthers 4-peat, even if you put it down to 3-peat and take the fourth one away, is more impactful and more important and just a better 3-peat than the Parramatta Eels one.
Oh yeah. This is going to create something here.
Yeah, it's a good point because the game's changed a lot, we'll say that much. To do what Penrith did, I don't want to take anything away from what they did. One of the years was COVID affected. We could probably, claim that as well. And in 2022, we just didn't turn up on the day. But what Parramatta did in the 80s, and none of us were born. None of us were born.
The greys in my beard tell otherwise.
19 what?
None of us were old enough to really remember it, but what Parramatta did was just a different game back then. It was a harder game. They were all working jobs and stuff. I think if the Parramatta 1981, 82, 83, and obviously they won 86 as well team, lost the grand final in 84, if they were in the modern day with the strength and conditioning and, the facilities they have now and stuff, they'd be able to win a lot more comps than what Penrith won in a row.
I disagree. Look, you put the two eras side by side. There was a salary cap here in the modern era. You didn't have a salary cap back then. You kept the same players. Penrith, we lost Stephen Crichton, we lost Appy Coruscant, we lost Matt Burden, we lost these big players, Jerome Luais being one of them as well. We didn't want to comp without him, but the salary cap era is a massive difference between the modern era and the past era. We lost players. The game is literally designed so you cannot have this type of dynasty. You know, Roosters couldn't do it for more than 2 years. Storm, they've made 4 grand finals in a row, only won 2 and not back to back, you know. So while, it was I would say, you know, it was harder for players. You know, they worked jobs, they had other stuff outside of rugby league. I just think if you guys were in this modern era, you wouldn't actually have the same team, and I don't think you would have been able to back it up time after time again.
I'll throw this at you. If you bring in a salary cap to that 80 squad, but then you also bring in the strength and conditioning, like you said, do you think a salary cap might affect that team? Do you think you'd lose players that you had during that time?
Well, I don't, and it's one thing that Flaxxy has said there as well. Like all those Penrith players, you know, they wanted to leave, they went elsewhere, they chased the money.
Yep.
You know, there's a thing called Parra proud, and they want to play for that jersey. Is that the difference?
Oh, I disagree. I would say, Stephen Crichton really wanted to stay with Penrith. I would say a bunch of the boys really wanted to stay with Penrith. We just couldn't afford them. That was the difference, you know. And I think you put that Parramatta team in the salary cap era, they're over the salary cap after the second year. So, as much as, you know, we did lose players and some did go to do their own thing, we just couldn't afford to keep them.
One of the big things that Penrith has is the ability to develop all their juniors and come through. I'm not saying Parramatta don't either, but if you take this side, the Panthers side over the last 6 years, back to the 80s, without what he's saying, the strength and conditioning, but add and take away the salary cap with all their juniors, some of the points you make are pretty valid.
Yeah, we have the best junior system in the comp, you know, and the difference between our dynasty and your dynasty as well is like we built through the juniors, and you know you wouldn't have your Brian Todd, Jerome Luai, Stephen Crichton combos in the 80s. That just wouldn't exist, and so I just think it's more important because of that, and just based on, I would say, even if you take the Penrith team back in the 80s, I still think Panthers are the more dominant. I would say, you know, you have Cleary who has the best IQ in the game. You know, I still think we would do better than the Parramatta one back then.
Okay, so name the best year of the Penrith dynasty.
2022.
2022, name the best year of the Parra dynasty.
It's really a hard one, probably 83. 83.
So we've got 83 Parra versus 2022 Penrith. Game, who wins? And give us some, you know, maybe the last 10 minutes, what happens in it. We'll go with you.
Well, if we're playing at the modern day, I'd say Penrith win because Parramatta boys are all 60. But if we're going to look at it and play in their current form, what they were when they won those comps, mate, defence wins matches, doesn't it? And Parramatta's defence has always been far superior. Then I get it, Penrith had a lot of flair in those teams. Look at the, I've gone to 83, but the 86 Parramatta team, how they turned up defensively in a game of 4-2.
Yep.
You know, like no one could score a try. That Bulldogs team was stacked as well. Like the Penrith team have been stacked for the last so many years. There's no way that Penrith could score the points they've scored against, let's say, the Parramatta 2022 team against the Parramatta 1983 or 86 team.
So we're saying like a 0-0 scoreline after full time.
Goes
the golden point.
Yeah.
And who kicks a field goal for the 86 team?
Stirlo comes on, but Nathan Highmarsh, how old is he? When we'll get him back. Hypothetical, we'll get him on to kick the field goal.
What about you? You're saying if Penrith win,
mate,
run down the last 10 minutes.
Last 10 minutes, just as you said. So defense wins championships, and what's Panthers been known for the past 4 years? Defense. Like we're the best defensive team in the comp, and we have been for the past 4 years. Last 10 minutes, you know, it would be a close game. I just see Nathan Cleary doing what he did against the Broncos and putting on a clinic, and you know, scoring a try to win the game. You know, or getting the field goal. I just don't see where Parramatta could get through Penrith in the 2022 lineup. Like, you could go back to round 12 in 2022 and go, Penrith win the comp. That's just how good they were. I don't think you could say that for Parramatta in round 12 of 1986 or whatever year it was.
Is that when Parramatta beat Penrith at Penrith, or was that round 11 in 2022? You know, when you hadn't lost those games for 2 years? Yeah. Look,
we won when it counts, so.
I knew to get fired.
I do see the point you're making. One thing I will add is, are we playing 2026 rules or 2022 rules or 86 rules, 83 rules?
Well, that's
because
another
I'll tell you this much, if Nathan Cleary did what he did against Brisbane back in 83, he probably wouldn't have finished the game.
Yeah, true, yeah. I'm sure there'd be a broken jaw or two.
Something.
Look, I don't know how it happens, but if we can get some technology to bring back the 86 team against the 2022 team, I would be buying front row tickets to that. Adam, what point have you got next for us?
All right. Get your paper up. Try and get your paper up. All right, so follows on from what we said. Western Sydney will always belong to Parramatta. Penrith just borrowed it for a few years.
Ooh. We got Flaxxy.
Well, Panthers just borrowed it for a few years. Are you talking about the stadium or are you talking about the whole Western Sydney? Because at the moment, Western Sydney belongs to Penrith, and it's belonged to Penrith at least for the last 5 years. And, we haven't had a sort of great history until from 2003 onwards. But I disagree. I think Penrith, we are clearly the Western Sydney team, and you guys are becoming more the city at this point. As much as the Sydney keeps building out, you guys are going to just be engraved by the city. You're going to be more associated with the Roosters and the Rabbitohs, I believe. So.
Are you saying that they're just sort of buying the fandom of all the people in Western Sydney for the years that they've won the comp?
Look, I don't want to repeat myself from the previous stuff, but obviously we're talking about Penrith being bandwagoners. Western Sydney area is growing rapidly, like you said, and Parramatta is becoming a major city. It's becoming kind of like Sydney itself. But the more Parramatta extends, the more areas they put into Parramatta and the more west, down to, or even starting to take over Tigers territory as well. Like you look at the size of Parramatta's junior base. Parramatta's junior base just keeps expanding over and over again. So Penrith, they haven't adapted out of Penrith, really. Like we said before, they won't travel out of Penrith. They won't fill stadiums at CommBank. Western Sydney is always going to belong to Parramatta.
Like you brought up the point earlier where, you brought up the point earlier where Penrith, really good community, really good area, right in Penrith. But if they're not going to willing to travel even to Parramatta, you've got a strong community there. What is it going to take for you guys to, branch out into other parts of Western Sydney? You've won 4 premierships in a row. You've been in the grand final for five from 2020 to 2024. So. Well,
I'd say Penrith kind of suffer from success. It's very expensive being a great team. You're always having to pay for finals tickets, pay for grand final tickets, pay for those. So it's hard to travel as well. And, fuel prices going through the roof, But, yeah, I think...
It does make a point. Those grand final tickets are expensive.
Yeah. I've got...
remember in 2022.
Yeah. They are a lot cheaper than the 86 and 83 grand final tickets, I can tell you that much.
$5 a ticket? Okay.
But, it boils down to, I'm kind of been disappointed, I'll say, with Panthers' attendance at Parramatta Stadium and, travelling. But there's still a good, real portion of, fans that do travel. And while it might not be as big as Parramatta, as we've gone back on the point, you guys have the biggest members, I'd expect more of a percentage of you guys to travel. I can't really argue the point of, why we don't travel, but I would like to see more. And I do believe over the past few years it has sort of grown as well.
I want to extend it outside of Western Sydney. I know I've made the statement about Western Sydney, but I think this Parramatta is a bigger club Australia-wide. Like as we know, I don't live in Parramatta myself. I travel 2 hours to every game. Mate, if my team was as good as Penrith's team, I'd be encouraging as many people as I could to travel that, 25 minutes from Penrith to Parramatta. And I don't see it. I come down the freeway, I see thousands of Parramatta fans travel down from the Central Coast and the Hunter Valley. I very rarely see a Penrith fan when I stop for, something on the way home to eat. So I just think Penrith it's a small club. Successful club, great for what they've achieved for the size of them, but they're pretty much a country town football club.
Ooh. I'm from a country town. I take offense to that.
So am I.
I need you to back me up on that one.
Yeah, I'm starting to side here with Flaxxy.
Yeah, look, we aren't one of the biggest clubs. We are the most valuable club, but, Brisbane's bigger, Parramatta's bigger, Roosters are bigger, I believe Souths are bigger, Yeah, I believe it does come from that sort of country western town, We weren't really a bigger club back in the day. A lot more people lived out in Parramatta. A lot more people lived out in the eastern suburbs. So, it was always going to be a smaller club than, Parramatta or any of the other clubs. So, yeah, I'm just, as I said, a bit disappointed that we didn't grow as big as we, or don't travel as much as we should. But it's growing, and I think as Sydney grows out and, more people sort of get into the game, you'll see more Panthers fans at more games.
I think Panthers need to use this as a bit of a promo to encourage fans to come. Yeah. And all your words against them, calling them a country club, will hopefully get them to the game. But Flaxxy, we're going to move on to your next point. What's the next one you got for us?
Every year, Parra say, this is our year, and it's not. It's this is our year. Next year's our year. Next year's our year. Been saying it since 86. Going to be saying it for another 30 years. When is it going to be your year?
Yeah, well, I'm a man of analytics, and probability is a thing. So, the more unsuccessful years you have means a good year's closer. So, look, stats are meant to be broken. Obviously, by the stats, we can't win the comp this year after conceding 50, but it could be our year,
It's literally it's like reading off a piece of paper. But yeah, every year there's a team that always says it. It does seem to be Parra fans. 2022 you made the grand final, but then dropped off. Can you see a repeat of 2022 coming soon?
We're building for it. I'll say this now. The club's done a wonderful job in the last few years of getting their junior base sorted. Starting to bring those good young junior players. We made a SG Ball grand final last year. We got beat in New South Wales Cup in a prelim final last year. There's a lot of good things happening at Parramatta and they're slowly starting to come through. Look, I'll be 100% honest. Every year at the start of the year, you want your team to win a comp.
Yep.
At the start of this year, I want us to play finals football because I think 2027 was always going to be Parramatta's year. And they've been building to 2027 for quite a while with some of our player signings and our junior players coming through. We're going to see some good young kids debut at the end of the year. And I think we set our comp for 2027. Don't ask me who I think will win the comp this year.
Well, apparently I'm a Dragons fan and our coach doesn't even think we're going to win the comp this year. So at least you haven't got your coach saying that.
Just here to win games, right?
Yeah, exactly. All right, moving on. Adam, what's your next point?
Yeah, point number 3. Mitch Moses will win the halfback of the year this year in the NRL.
Look, I can't disagree. He's going to play more games. Obviously, Cleary's going to go play Origin, and, that will take games away from him. So, the more, they play, the more points you're going to get. So, yeah, I can't really argue with that. Is he the better halfback? No, but,
What is that the biggest slide on Nathan Cleary that he's never won a Dally M? We went close in 2020.
Unfortunately, he did a dance and it got stripped from him.
Yeah.
But he's won comps, and I've always personally believed that the Dally M, it's not as meaningful as any other sort of MVP type awards. Winning comps, he's got 2 finals MVPs, if you call it like that, want to call it that way. So I would say that's sort of more important and more, a higher level of success than winning a Dally M.
I'm going to turn this into a bit more Mitch Moses versus Nathan Cleary because you made an interesting point about Nathan Cleary playing State of Origin. Do you think Nathan Cleary is a lock for State of Origin? Because I think everyone agrees, and you're a neutral fan here, but everyone agrees that New South Wales is so much better when Mitchell Moses is the halfback.
And I suppose your point was backed up in last year's first game where Mitch Moses was picked ahead of Nathan Cleary in the halfback.
He was. And look, I think, while Mitch Moses can dominate games, Cleary will dominate errors, and we'll look at both careers at the end of the end of their careers, and Nathan Cleary will have dominated Origin. Has he? It's up for debate. He didn't obviously have a great year last year. He has won
or the year before.
Or the year before. Yeah. He has been part of winning Origin series though. So, look, I just think he hasn't had the team behind him, but I think Cleary will, in the future, you look at the future and you look at the back, when their careers finish, I think Cleary will have a better Origin record than Moses.
See, I don't think Nathan Cleary can handle playing Origin because he can't handle playing football outside of a Penrith structure. And the Penrith structure, although it's great to watch and entertaining, doesn't work when times get tough like Origin.
Well, I'll say your point's backed up again with Moses winning at Suncorp.
Yep.
Something that hadn't been done in 20 years, and also Nathan Cleary struggles in the not just Origin but with Australia. I'm with you. He's played very well in the games. Yeah. He was part of a series that went to Queensland, won all 3 games, won the series in their backyard, didn't win all 3 games, but he was part of the first 2 games. He won 18-19 as a young fella as well, but had some great teams behind him. Now he needs to start dominating Origin to really make a claim for it, right?
Well, there is a big sort of question mark around it. I can't not lie about it. He obviously last year and the year before he wasn't the greatest when playing, but I genuinely believe that while he hasn't been great, he's not. I believe you've called him a system player. He's not a system player. He's one of the. I believe he'll retire one of the greatest players of all time, the greatest halfback of all time at that. He has such an IQ for the game, and he shows up in big games. We've seen it with the 4 grand finals he's won. I haven't seen that with Mitch Moses grand finals, but I just, I think,
Why
you
just
know,
put an S on the end of grand finals? It's
but
He's looking to the future.
yeah. But I think, you know, he's a big time player, and he just hasn't unfortunately been able to translate that into Origin or Australia. So, but we'll see it. We'll definitely see it, I believe, in the future.
All right, well, it's a challenge. I can't wait. I can't wait to see over the next few years them where they pick them in Origin and who knows, Australia as well. Flaxxy, you mentioned Nathan Cleary as the greatest halfback. This leads into your next point. What is it?
Nathan Cleary is going to retire and he's going to become an immortal.
Oh, you think he's done enough in his career to be listed as an immortal?
Oh, maybe number 33, but there's a few to get through yet, surely. Like, when you look at who needs to become an immortal yet, there's a lot. I've got no doubt that Nathan Cleary has been a great player for what he's achieved at a club level. Obviously, we've touched on it earlier, but I don't know, because I don't know how much he's got left. Like, doesn't love conquer all? How long does Nathan Cleary have left in the game?
Oh,
Like,
could he be moving on?
Could he be moving on? He might go to the Super League. Like, you go to the Super League, you can't be an immortal. He might go anywhere, really.
Yeah, he's going to go to PNG because, you know, Mayor Fowler has a heritage there. No, he's stuck with Penrith. As long as Ivan's there, he's there, and Penrith aren't looking to get rid of him anytime soon. So, look, he's won more comps than half the Immortals. Like, you know, he's won 4 comps in a row. No Immortal has ever done that before. I just think, you know, like, you know, I already put him above Cooper Cronk. If he was to retire right now, I would already put him above Cooper Cronk in terms of just how dominant he's been in the game. And look, Penrith, who do you think's winning the comp this year again?
Me?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Penrith. So that's going to be 5 comps to his resume, and, you know, he's got many, many years left. So I think he will retire with at least, you know, I'm being optimistic here, but 9. And you know, he's going to have way more grand finals he's won than lost. And yeah, I just see there's no reason why he shouldn't be an immortal at that rate.
There's a couple of halfbacks that you've maybe conveniently left out of, or at least one in the Immortals. But JT, you know, he's a halfback who won a couple of comps and done so much in Origin. But there's one Immortal that you've left out in Joey Johns. You're saying Nathan Cleary's better than Joey Johns. I need you to back that up a little bit further.
I think by the end of Cleary's career, we'll all say that. We'll be all saying that. And look, right now, absolutely not. Like, I can't, you know, I can't say that right now. For Andrew Johns is greatest of all time at the moment. But you just look at the trajectory that Cleary's career's taken. If you stop their careers at the same time, Cleary's already above everyone.
Yep.
And the trajectory he's on, I just don't see why after retiring he would be any less than anyone else.
What about this? Some of the Immortals have changed the game. Would you say Nathan Cleary's changed the game in the way he plays? And if so, how?
I think in terms of how, maybe not Cleary as a player, but as a like the team he's been a part of, he's definitely changed the game in terms of how you're meant to play the game. Panthers have become a fast-paced team. You know, they're putting Storm like on their bottoms. I don't know if I'm allowed to say the other one, but you know, they've put Storm to shame. They've put Bellamy to shame. They've put some of the greatest coaches to shame. And defense wins championships, and the way that rugby league's played now, it's based on defense. I mean, it's always kind of been based on defense, but recently Penrith have just shown how to win comps and how you need to play and what level you need to be a competitive team, and no other team can combat that. And who's leading it? Nathan Cleary, and that's where I believe the legacy will come into effect.
So you're going to put a halfback as an immortal based on his defense. It's one of the most interesting things I've heard.
I want to say more than his defense. You know, his IQ of the game, the way he runs the ball, the way he kicks, everything about his game is great. I was just sort of, I was trying to make it more of a team effort than.
I'll say this, and I'm not an Andrew Johns lover at all. I grew up in Maitland, and we all know how much I hate the Knights. I hate the Knights more than the Panthers, but
especially after 2001.
Yeah, 10-year-old Adam's still crying. But what I will say, based on what Andrew Johns did, I'd say that Ivan Cleary belongs more of an immortal than what Nathan Cleary does, because Ivan Cleary came up with a system that Penrith won. As I said, Nathan Cleary is a player of the system. Andrew Johns, for example, and Jonathan Thurston, you got to look at some of the players they played in their career. Nathan Cleary has played as part of that system, that next up mentality. Has played with some excellent players. Andrew Johns won a 2001 comp and a 97 comp with local Newcastle products. You know, blokes that were still working at the start of the year when they won the comps and stuff. Once again, completely different era. So, I'm sorry, I can't put him past Johns or Thurston. And I'm not going to go into Cooper Cronk because it's going to open a whole nother can of worms because, you know, they won a couple of comps they shouldn't have. But I'd have him probably third. But you've got to look at Sterlo as well. Like, we can go back to that age debate before.
Langer.
Yeah, Langer, exactly right. There's so many of them.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think the trajectory's on, as I said before, and just all he hasn't done is dominated Origin. Realistically, if Cleary dominated Origin as one, obviously, you know, the talent back then there was so many gun players in Andrew John's era, and there's still gun players in today's era. But I would say the only knock on his that's stopping him from being an Immortal, why people perceive him as not one, is because of his Origin. If he's dominated Origin the past, you know, the games he's played, everyone thinks he's the best of all time. And we're going to miss him when he's gone, when he's not playing. And that's my big key on it.
Well, hopefully we've got a few more years left in him, and hopefully we get to see Moses maybe challenge him for that Immortal status. I know that's what you want to see, but what's your next point?
The club handled the Zach Lomax situation as best as it could.
I got to agree on this, you know, like...
That's all it took, changed his mind straight
There
away.
you go.
One thing you want to see from your club as a fan is a backbone. You know, you don't want them to be pushed over by other clubs, especially by the NRL themselves. And that's what Parramatta did. Like, I can't disagree with that. The way they handled it is how I would want Penrith to handle it if, you know, God forbid, but Bizza was to do the same thing, you know, which he would never do. Just, you know, fight for your players and fight for your club. You know, if you're going to lose a star player, which, you know, he's played Origin, you kind of want something in return. And I find it kind of funny that, you know, all it took was Ryan Madison saying no, to stop that whole thing from happening. But yeah, I wouldn't disagree with you at all. I think, you know, the way they handled it was very professional and how I would want Penrith to handle it.
I think the way it was handled as well got a lot of fans on side from multiple clubs. I don't think I've seen more universal support for especially Parramatta. Yeah. But for what they did. So, yeah, look, I don't we need to change anyone's mind, but you think, you know, what Parramatta did is really helped other fans of other clubs the way they go forward? Because a lot of fans, like I said, were in support of it.
Yeah, they set a standard. It's pretty simple. Like, what would have happened if Parramatta just rolled down and said, you can go? We've been looking at 1-year contracts in the future for clubs. It would end up like a transfer window kind of thing because every player would have signed for a new club. If they didn't like it, they just could have moved on. You know, they got a better offer, they could have moved on. And for Parramatta to, I guess, make a stand and take on everyone they did in that situation, I was so proud. And I'll be the first to call my club out if I don't agree with something, but I'll be the first to praise them when I agree with it. And I'll say now, when we were down in Melbourne, obviously that didn't go real wonderful, but when we were down in Melbourne before the event, it's the most united I've seen the Parramatta fans. It's the most support I've seen them give the club. Like, Parramatta Real CEO Jim Sarantinos was there, and everyone was walking up, chatting with him, congratulating him on what they'd achieved. And, you know, I pretty much gave him his flowers, you know, gave him his dues and pretty much made an announcement thanking him in front of everyone. So, yeah, it's great to see how it was handled, and hopefully it's the last we ever see in the NRL.
If only that support transferred on the field.
Yeah.
You might have conceded 50,
I wasn't saying nice things at half time.
I was going to say, it was a very short-lived sort of communion, wasn't it?
We were up here, then we were down here.
All right, I've got Flaxxy. Mate, your final point. What have you got for us?
Final point. Panthers will win 2 comps before Parra win 1.
I mean, they made a prelim last year. It's going to be hard to argue, but, mate, what do you think?
Look, we'll go back to probability. And the probability is that Penrith are in a better position already this year to win a comp. I'm just going to come out and say this because we've been teasing it, we've been looking at it and all this kind of stuff, and it's getting about as predictable as your hair posts. I think Penrith will win the comp this year. I've had Penrith to win the comp. I've said it on a podcast before. I think they built nicely at the back end of last year. And I just think it's all coming in, you know, the whole Blaze Talangi, Nathan Cleary combinations. Really, I'm a big fan of Blaze. I love him as a kid, love him as a player, and he's going to do some special things. The only thing stopping Penrith from winning a comp this year or going close to winning a comp, in my opinion, is injuries. Like Flaxxy said, they've lost so many players in the last few years. And whether that be salary cap pressure, whether that be because people just don't want to live in Penrith anymore when they get a bit of money, I'm not quite sure. But Yeah, I don't think you'll win 2 comps before we win 1 because, as I've said, 2027, mate, it's our year.
He said it before. It's not. This is our year. At the end of the year, we're saying next year's our year.
It's 2027. Yeah.
And look, when Penrith go back to back, I'm sure 28 will be a year as well. So, look, I just think obviously this year we're in such a good position. And even last year, we did have that sort of slow start to the year, but we're just such a resilient team, and we managed to come back into the top 8, nearly made the top 4 before, Ivan decided to rest the players 2 weeks before the season ended. But look, I just think Parramatta are still in that rebuilding stage, and while yes, you're in a good trajectory going up, I just don't see you just winning a comp and being competitive in that sense for at least another 4 or 5 years.
Can I ask you a question? If you win the comp this year, right, where are you going to celebrate? Like, you're going to come back to Parramatta and celebrate? Are you going to go to that dirt pile at Penrith? Like, the stadium's not done yet. You're going to go to Penrith Leagues Club?
Or
like
a podium set up in the middle of CommBank?
Yeah, like you're going to go St Mary's or Mount Druitt or somewhere in between, like close enough to Parramatta? What are you going to do?
Look, we might have to move you guys out to the new stadium, and we might just have to take over Parramatta because,
You just won't be able to fill it. We know that.
Okay, so this year isn't. This year, you're saying is Penrith's year, but next year your year.
Yeah, 100%.
finish
Yeah,
like that, yeah.
2027. So yeah, it
But you're
won't
saying
be 2
next
and 1.
year's your year as well.
next year's, I reckon we stay on this trajectory. We tend, when we lose players, we win premierships, and we're losing a few players at the end of the year. And Matt Eisen, who's just announced his retirement.
Nathan Cleary to the English Super League.
He might go to PNG.
He might go to PNG, But I think, look, I think we're gonna do really well, and we're not. What's stopping us at the moment? The juniors that just keep coming through, they're so good, and they just replace the next man up mentality. So there's no stop in sight. Took a year off, just like you guys did.
Can we make a little bet on this?
Oh,
Can we do that? Can we have wages?
This is a show where we even though we're trying to change each other's mind, if you can't, let's set up a bet for something.
You've obviously got the hair bet going, right?
Yep.
So, my hair, it's going. It's the stress of Parramatta. I lost about another, I reckon, 2 inches come round 1. But if Penrith, you're confident Penrith are going to win the comp.
Absolutely, 100%.
Right, so you're going to turn around. So I'll say this: if Penrith win the comp, right, I'll shave my head.
Oy.
Right, I'll let it go. I'll let it go. Now, what are you going to do if Parramatta can't win a comp? Can they?
Well, by the stats, you say they can't.
Well, what do you reckon they're going to come this year?
If Parramatta win 1 comp before Penrith win 2,
we're talking long term.
We're long stakers. We're in this for the long run.
How about this? I'll pull it up. Let's make it this year. So if Penrith win the comp, you'll shave your head.
Yeah.
If Parramatta make the 8, would you be willing to do something if they make the 8?
I think they're going to make the 8, but
I want this from you. I want you to go back to 6-year-old Flaxxy. I want a Parramatta membership and a Parramatta jersey at round 1 next year. Actually, no, round 1 will be in Vegas. First Parramatta home
I'm
game
actually probably going to go to Vegas. So
there we go.
If they
make the 8,
you'll
show up in Vegas in a Parramatta jersey.
Oh, God help me. Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
we'll do it. Shake on it. Make it official.
There we go. Shaved head. If Penrith win the comp, Parramatta make the 8, you turn up in Vegas in a Parramatta
Never
jersey.
beating the allegations.
I love this. There we go. We've got a bandwagon. He's jumping back on the bandwagon, the Parramatta bandwagon, and we're going to see we might see a bald Adam. Who knows? But let's jump into the final topic, boys. One little bonus one where we're going to pick a player. He's got to play in every position from 1 to 13, and they go head to head against each. Adam, who you got for Parra?
I'm actually going to let him go first because I reckon my player is going to annihilate him at whatever position he picks. So.
Right, let's go. Flaxxy, who you got?
Greatest of all time, Nathan Cleary, man. Can kick the ball, has vision, the best IQ in the game. He can run hard, he can tackle hard. What can't he do? And you said he's a system player. If you get 13 or 17 Nathan Clearys with the coach of Ivan Cleary, who's beating him?
How's he go up front? I want to see him in 8 and 10.
Mate,
is he going to be making 150, 200 yards?
Well, hey, look, Penrith are known for, Bizarre, Dylan Edwards run 200, 300 metres a game. So, it's just in Penrith's DNA to have their backs as their forwards. So, yeah, I think it would go fine.
And who we got for Parramatta?
He's pretty much saying it's in the system. Look, you can have your Nathan Cleary and I'll raise you a Fui Moi Moi because you look at it this way. Nathan Cleary runs him on the wing, Fui eats him, nails him, straight over the top of him. Front row, Fui does him as well. You don't know Fui can't kick a ball. Fui can do everything. Like, with that crowd chanting Fui every time he does something, he could kick a 40-20. He could nail a conversion from the sideline. There's nothing that the great Fui Moi can't do.
Can I ask you this? If Nathan puts a chip over the top, how long before Fui Moi runs out of gas? 20 metres, 10?
He doesn't, because as Nathan Cleary chips over the top, Philly hits him with a shoulder.
Penalty, and we take the 2.
Yeah, that's fine. You can go up in 2s because every time Philly's got the ball, and Philly's actually, you don't know this, so I can't believe you don't, but Philly actually invented the short kickoff. So what he actually did at training, he kicked it off and went and caught it himself. So he'll get the ball back every time.
This is great debate. I want to see it because as a big boy fan, I love Philly playing all positions. Mate, I'm with you. I've got to go with you. I normally don't take sides, but I've got to go with the big boy over Nathan Cleary there.
And Philly's 44 and still playing as well, so he'll be right.
Was he playing 5th grade rugby union or
I know,
3rd grade
I can't keep
cricket
up
or
anymore.
something? Great debate, boys. I want to see that 13 on 13. I want you to let us know in the comments what Philly can do, because there was plenty of things that you said he can do, and I want to know what the comments from everyone else is. That was spicy. I love that, boys. And thank you for joining us for Change My Mind, brought to you by the Isuzu MU-X.